That was a tremendous discussion. I think we all heard some great insight there, and particularly a nice link to our next presentation. What does the media company of the future look like? If you were starting a media business now, what would you need, and how would it work? What would the operating model be? And here to tell us something about how that might work, please welcome from the Boston Consulting Group, Antonella Mei-Pochtler.
Thank you very much. So we have seen fantastic examples of great companies who have prepared for the future. And we had also a very interesting discussion before on the panel about what should the name of FIPP be changed into. And one proposal was FIC, and I saw that it's the Federation of Camping, and Caravanning, and I think that's already covered. So perhaps at the end, we will see how do we change the name, how should we change the name to capture more the needs of the future. So let me just start, concentrate on one point, which is how do you make money in the future, and where are the profit pools going, and what are the future operating models that you need to master, really, to be able to profit from the shifts that are taking place. Let me just summarize a little bit the big shifts that we are confronted with. The first one is really very much linked to the consumer habits, and we have seen the double flip, basically, now already. First of all, moving from print to digital. I mean, that's already of course, something that happened, but of course, the second flip was the movement to mobile. And if you look just at the number of hours per day that people are consuming on mobile screens, it's just enormous, 6 hours a day. And actually, we are not speaking anymore of the daily journey. It's it's the hourly journey that mobile has been capturing. And so this is a major, major shift. And actually, if you look just at the news consumption in the UK, we have 38 million Facebook users in the UK, and 50% of those users consume news via Facebook, just to take one example. But we will come to the role of platforms in a second. The second big thing is that digital is exploding. A lot of people have mentioned digital. The problem with digital is that it's very difficult to monetize it, really. Digital costs to be produced. Most of the publishers are subscale compared to those who are originating from video. And so, really, you have added costs, but not, you have higher CPMs than for normal ads, but lower than for quality content. And so, it's really about finding a way to fully monetize video in the right way. So the video boom, yes, but how to make money out of it. The third big change is the rise of old and new platforms. The old platforms are not so old. It's the Facebooks, the Instagrams, and the Snapchats, and the Googles, and the Amazons. But then we see, particularly in the US, an enormous role of the telcos and the ISPs, particularly now with a regulatory change, which allows them to really store and use the data and have really PII, personalized information about consumers. They are the gatekeepers in terms of owning and integrating the information, and so they have a real analytics advantage. And so there, on the platform, it's really about who has the best integrated view of the consumer, and who has the best integrated view, just not of the digital usage, but also of the offline usage. And there we have, as publishers, we have a disadvantage because normally we do not have PIIs. We don't have the personalized information as ISPs or the Googles and Facebooks have. So this is a major issue. And clearly, we know that the platforms are monetizing enormously. They have 60% of the, just Google and Facebook and Google, Facebook, Snapchat have 60% of the total advertising revenues, and actually they capture 80% of any growth. So it's really enormous. And now Amazon is challenging a little bit, And that has, of course, just to come to the last point, it's really implying a lot of changing on the supply side. Clearly, the negative changes are that there is there is portfolio cleanup that needs to take place. Not all the publishing brands survive, but clearly there is also a major change in terms of how media are being produced. It's really about making sure that you fully capitalize on technology to have a much lower cost of news and entertainment generation, and that you work in a much more integrated way between print and digital and mobile, and also that you are able to learn new skills to manage this. So these are the major trends in a nutshell, and that has a clear implication in terms of the shifting profit pools. It's not just that you have a shift within each magazine company, specifically from advertising, which is decreasing much more than the subscription business. You have also a shift of the profit pools to platforms and to the tech enablers, who help us with a lot of nice tools. I mean, basically, if we go on the other side of the building, we see all these nice tech enablers. At every fair, there are new ones coming up, and we know that we need always to experiment and learn to use them. So this is a major shift, and in this major shift, the question is, how do we really survive, and how do we make the best out, and how can we thrive? Let me just show one data point a little bit more in detail, because very often we think that some geographies are more, are looking differently from others. And actually, yes, there are some changes, but basically, and this is just the consumption of information and news and not entertainment, it's basically the first flip has taken place almost everywhere. So online is more important than print everywhere, in every market. And in some market, particularly just to take the Nordics as most advanced markets, there the second flip to mobile has already taken place. So mobile has 60% of the entry point. So this is something that is really, it's there. It's there to stay, and it's continuing. Now, let me just go in a moment on this analytics piece, because this is a very important point. We have seen and we have discussed so far about the need to have really this integrated view of the consumer, and actually it's really about having all information about the daily routines and the behaviors offline and online, and have location-based views. And this is something that some of the new platforms have, but what they do not have, and what you have, is the context. They can really have an integrated view of the consumer, but they cannot guarantee that an advertiser gets the perfect context. So, we have this fight on the one side on having the analytics in place, but on the other side, in using the analytics, it's really about having, just avoiding all the big misses, the user fragmentation and, the ability to control fake news, having the editorial authority, and really meaningful relationships. And if we think about being relevant, for all these things that, are important for the consumer, for product discovery, for information, it's really also about giving the right context. Now, clearly, there is a blockade on using the data. And so all the efforts by publishers to make sure that they have better access on consumer data have not really gone very far. And we think that it's quite important, also as an association, to think more intensely on how to partner up with the new emerging platforms to be able to have access to the data, because you give the context. And so I think that this is quite an important, just an important mission as an industry overall. Let me just show one example of what the impact of all this is in one market. The German market, which I know best, is clearly, you can say, the general trend is, unfortunately, that the subscription is declining. But you have very different areas. You have some which are really sort of endangered species, some which are threatened, and some are real survivors. And actually, if you look at also the market shares, particularly in the endangered areas, which is women, current events, or children, you have some outliers. So, and the outliers are quite interesting. They are not coming from the media world. The most successful children publishing offer today is from Lego. So it's a Lego magazine. You know, so they have been entering. Somebody said, I think, you know, the gentleman from April, you know, Walter said, you know, every company is a media company. Yes, Lego is a media company. It's not just a games company, it's a media company. And they have also created a very successful magazine. And so I think that we need to see, you know, there is a horizontal competition taking place here. And the change in subscription is not just, you know, because you have the marginals getting out, you have also some new entrants challenging the situation. So you have some areas like we have seen, you know, in cars and sports, where some offers have been so creative in terms of going more into commerce and into special services for consumers that the decline in circulation has been just stopped or at least, you know, reduced significantly. So I think, you know, the general message here is there is not one size fits all. It's really about deeply understanding what the asset is that you have, what the consumer wants, and making sure that you have a much, much higher consumer intimacy and knowledge and are able to use this. So what is the pathway for magazine companies? You know, and we think, you know, if we look at the engagement and reach that magazines have, then we have seen a movement from interest-based communities to advertising platforms with sharp targeting, to the rise of the horizontal communities and social networks, which have created the first decline. But there is a pathway to success, to growth again, if we move to what I would call magnets, you know, magazine networks. You know, you can call them brand networks, but magazine networks, real magnets for communities, real magnets for individualized engagement. And the key thing is really that publishers optimize the individual engagement and the trust, the building on the trust base that we have, but at a much lower cost. So the real challenge is how do we make sure that we get nearer to the consumer, that we engage more with the consumer, that we offer more services to the consumer, but also that we make sure that the basic product is done at a lower cost. And that has to do a lot with intelligent use of artificial intelligence and other means of support, of making sure that, you know, the networking within the company and to the outside world works in a very different way. So to become magnets, I think, you know, you need to ask yourself a couple of questions, you know. And the first question is really, what are the real strengths? What are the real assets that can be leveraged? We at BCG, we have a methodology, you know, we have a 6-step approach to really screen, you know, what do you have? Because there is not one single answer for every magazine. Some have a lot of opportunities, some others have little opportunities, and the opportunities are very different. There are very different pathways. One can go more into e-commerce, some others need to go much, much more into club offerings. You know? So the first thing is really understanding what is my individual profile. The second thing is what are the attractive opportunities to pursue based on these trends, you know? What is the size of the revenue and the profit pool? And there, what we see is that very often there is not very, you know, one is not very sincere in this area. There is a lot of promises which are not materializing. I think it's, some of the markets look big, but really making sure that you capture them is difficult. So I think really having I would say a dispassionate view of what is possible is very important. Third thing is, what capabilities will I need really to manage, you know, to get to these profit pools? And we have discussed before, and we have seen it in the presentations before, that there are a lot of new capabilities that one needs, and also new organizational setups to make sure that you really capture those. And this is something that has to do a lot with talent development and really making sure that you are attractive for the right talent. And then in the end, how do I prepare for the transformation? It's a major transformation effort. Now, let me come particularly to the point of what is there, where can you develop? And I think, this is just the view. If we look at, there is no BCG presentation without a 2x2 matrix. I mean, that's, you have to go through this, If you look at the physical engagement on one side and the digital engagement on the other side, most of the magazines start here with a print magazine, so with the physical engagement. And the first step is really to get into digital publishing. Digital publishing is a tricky thing, It's not, as we know, we have immense inventory, so the price control is much more limited. And so, in a sense, yes, it's attractive. There seems to be a lot of space, but we know that very often we capture only, if we use the platforms, and the platforms get around 40% of the total revenue. So going into here is a must, but we know that monetizing it, there is this famous saying of, you convert a dollar to a penny. And so it's really not so easy here. You can then, you can say, I increase the physical engagement. So I go into agency services, and agency services are very important because this capitalizes on your proximity to the advertisers. And there you can have insights, you can offer creative, you can have a particular execution, and that is of course attractive. And actually the business there is also a big one, but of course it's clearly contested and it's occupied already by agencies. But I think that is, in a sense, is a must if you want to be more advertiser-centric. Then you can go one step further and say, I really want to go into brand activation, events, radio, out-of-home, clubs. And this is something that brings you very, very near to the consumer. And the business potential there is huge. And it can be capitalized if you have very, very strong, magnetic brands, that can help you. On the digital side, clearly you can go on online branded content. I mean, clearly everybody has a little bit of branded content, but it's very difficult really to make big bucks with it. Or you can even go one step further and go into e-commerce, lead generation, and e-clubs. And there you need totally different capabilities, particularly if you want to have a high value added there. It's really about mastering, just merchandising and logistics, which is a different capability. So if you look at the capabilities, we start here. Most companies have these capabilities here, and you need to add all these new capabilities, both on the organizational side and on the monetization side. So if you really want to become a real profitable magnet, a magnet company, you need to add a lot of capabilities, and particularly on the monetization, because we often see that there is a lot being added up there. That normally means higher costs. But you need to be able really to fully monetize, and that is, what one needs to master. We have seen a couple of examples. I don't, in the course of the morning and the early afternoon, and some of you know, time has changed totally the whole publishing operation with a fully integrated internal network, making sure that they can really do the print and digital in one approach, and that they can really monetize and utilize the content capabilities much more. We have some examples of Meredith managing agency service, having 100 million revenues just in agency services. We can go on the right-hand side and look at Egmont, or even the wonderful example of a Brill being able of generating great e-commerce revenues. I think the examples are there, and there is a lot to be learned. But the key thing is that each of them have changed dramatically their value chain and also their talent pool. So let me finish with some watch outs. What are the watch outs to be able to manage this, to master this? first of all, I mean, you need to strengthen the core if you want to become a magnet. You know, you need to have to sharp shoot on the adjacencies, you know. You cannot do all of this, what I showed before. You need to have a very clear path where you're going to. You need to move to an open source editorial, managing much more the capability to take the information from the market and process it in a cost-efficient way. You need to learn to coexist with the platforms and also to do data deals with the platforms. And by doing that, become a data powerhouse, manage the analytics, and in the end, you need to manage the change, and this transformation is key. And if you do that, you will become the excellent magnet of the future, and that should be, and therefore, I think I propose that we change the name not to FICC, but to FIM, the Federation of Magnets.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we're around for questions if anyone would like to find out more a little bit later.